Welcome to the Stuff That Growth is Made of LinkedIn podcast series. Today we have a wonderful guest, Chalmers Brothers, who recently held a workshop for my CEO Peer Advisory Board focusing on the very important topic of leaders, conversations, and results. Chalmers is a highly rated and requested speaker. So hello, Chalmers, and welcome.
Hello, Margaret. It's great to be with you. I'm looking forward to our conversation together.
Same here. I thought, Chalmers, it would be great for us just to start with you sharing a little bit about your background and how
Yeah.
you became a subject matter specialist on this topic.
I'll be happy to. Long story short, I'm about to have my 40th wedding anniversary, and I know this body of work is a huge reason I have a 40-year marriage and not a one-year marriage. My wife and I were introduced to the body of work that's now central in my life, the world of ontological coaching, in 1987. And Margaret, it changed my life. It was an introduction to the power of language, an introduction to the world, like you and I were just talking about nobody sees things as they are. We are each inherently subjective in how we perceive. And it was just at that point in my life, it was an eye opener. I was working at Anderson Consulting, and to be honest, my initial thought process about this workshop was, if I haven't heard about this already, how good can it be? And some friends of ours, one of whom is actually a Vistage chair in Louisiana, she said, look, we'll pay for you and Betsy to go. And if you don't think it's worth it, don't pay us back. And it was
Yeah.
a gigantic introduction to this work. Long story short, I stayed with it. I left Anderson in 94, and I took a year-long program called Mastering the Art of Professional Coaching from the Newfield Network in Boulder, Colorado. And Margaret, since January of 1996, this is all I've been doing is programs, workshops, now two books are all based on this work. The way it ultimately started in Vistage, where you and I did connect, I was a member of a Rotary Club in Tennessee where we lived, and actually am still today. And at our meeting, the speaker didn't show up. And the president of the Rotary Club said, can anybody fill 20 minutes? I said, well, look, I've been doing this work. This is in 1998. So I've been doing this work for 2, 3, 4 years. I raised my hand. I can do 20 minutes. Margaret, I had a conversation in the room there, and two people came up afterwards, one of whom was a member, and it was called Tech at the time. He said,
Mhm.
my name is John Stevens. Can you do a half a day version of what you just did? I said, I can do 5 days. He said, I don't need 5 days, but if you could do a half a day, I think, he said, I've never heard anyone quite look at leadership the way you're doing it. I think we would benefit from it as a peer group, and you'd be exposed to a wider world. I said, John, I have no idea what you're talking about, but the answer is yes. And so I spoke to my first Vistage group in 1998. And
Wow.
I'm still on the Vistage circuit here 28 years later. And I recently passed my 1,000 Vistage session back in October. Um, and interesting, Margaret, at that same meeting, another guy came up and said, my name is so and so. I'm with the U.S. Social Security Administration. We're about to put out a request for proposals. He said, I like what you said about leadership. We're going to do leadership training in the southeastern US. Would you like to get the RFP? I said, sure. I submitted. I did not get the work. But then about a month later, he called up and said that the company that did win got disqualified or whatever. And would you like to do it? I said, yes. And Margaret, that turned into 24 two-day leadership workshops over a 24-month period. And I started doing this work month in, month out, month in, month out. And finally, someone said, where can I get a book about this stuff? And my thought process was, number one, I'm not smart enough to write a book. Number two, the people who taught me should write the book. I'm a practitioner. And finally, one person too many said, why don't you write the book? And I had a cobbler has no shoes moment. I'm in the business a lot of helping people move past unpowerful beliefs. And I was apparently the only one who didn't believe I could write the book. And so that one Rotary meeting where I stood up and did 20 minutes turned into a 28-year Vistage career. And when I finally did write the book, the table of contents of my first book, Language and the Pursuit of Happiness, is my agenda for a 2-day workshop, because that's all I knew. And as it turned out, that one that one meeting, those two individuals, I tell my kids, look, if somebody asks you if you can do something and it's kind of in your wheelhouse, give it a go.
Yeah,
Give it
that's
a go.
amazing.
It's amazing how that now maybe I would have found Vistage without that, but I know I did find it that way. And so my work now is split between Vistage groups and my longer term SOAR program. So I do an awful lot of half-day workshops around the country. And actually I was fortunate enough to be in Malaysia. I spoke to Vistage chairs in Malaysia back in December. So
Love it.
yeah, my work is kind of split between my half-day workshops in the Vistage world and my 6-month program, longer program, that where I work inside organizations with leadership teams.
So, well, first of all, congratulations on your 40th anniversary and,
Crazy.
over 1,000. That's a big number in terms of workshops with the Vistage for sure. And we're glad we're part of over 1,000. I actually have your book, one of your
Beautiful.
books with me.
That's my second one yet.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, well, good. But, let's get into, a little bit more of the content, as you and I were talking briefly before we started this. And I do just want to mention that some of the things we talked about resonated with me I was surprised a little bit. Certain topics, especially, and I know you'll talk about it, is, we really have choices in terms of the stories we tell about whether you're in something that's an uncontrollable or a certain event, how are you going to react to that? So there's just some great nuggets and I feel like after reflecting on the workshop with you, I have changed or am changing my approach to things.
All
So
right.
thank you for that. And I'm excited for the listeners to hear a little bit more. So would love to, Chalmers, for you to give an overview and an example of some of the foundational themes that you talked about during the workshop. I know we can't go too deep, but it would be great for you
I
to
would love
highlight
to.
some of the
I
things.
would love to. I start, you may recall, with a big eye in the sky looking at a stick person meant to indicate you taking a look at you, me taking a look at me, self-awareness. So the basic claim is everything starts there. Any purposeful, meaningful change starts with the one person we can actually change, which is ourselves. And when we start flexing the noticing muscle, the self-awareness muscle, there's some very interesting things that we can start to become aware of. Now, my work, if you remember, was I asked leaders, what do you get paid to do? I get paid to shape the culture. I get paid to lead by example. I get paid to keep the lights turned on. I get paid to maintain continuous process improvement, all of that. And the next question is, okay, that's great. I agree. But what would a camera see you doing as you're doing that? What is the human being who is doing all the things that leaders get paid to do? What is the human being actually doing? And with a little reflection, well, it would see me engaging with humans, talking and listening. Leaders get paid to have effective conversations. And my experience, Margaret, this is so close we don't see it. It's so obvious we can miss it. Leaders are conversational architects and conversational engines. So, given the centrality of conversation, being a strong leader has nothing to do with the arm strength. It has to do with our capacity to engage productively in certain conversations. To build a culture, you don't need a hammer and nails. It's a metaphor, right? So this notion, the centrality of conversations now takes us to a place where we can talk about language. And my work is based on a foundation that language creates and generates. It does not simply describe. Yes, we do describe with language, but that's not all that we do. And understanding and being intentional about the creative dimension, the creative nature of our language allows us to be much more, and you said it, at choice. We can make some very different choices here, understanding what we're up to. And a foundational self-awareness distinction or way of looking at things that we covered in our program is event is not equal explanation, right? Events are objective events that happen in the world, and explanations are, of course, our interpretations. And understanding and living with real clear clarity on the difference between these is gigantic. Because I believe,
So I'm going to stop you there. Give an example of what that means. So,
like in our workshop, we
yeah.
talked about a little kid comes home from school and says, I'm stupid. What are you talking about? He says again, I'm stupid. What are you talking about? He finally says, I got an F on my final exam. So in this example, the event is the F on the test. The explanation is, I'm stupid. And what's critical to understand, it is not the events of our lives that move us to action. It's our explanations of those events. You and I can be in the same event, the same car wreck, the same meeting, and afterwards have very different interpretations of what just happened. And it's not the car wreck or the meeting natively that influences the actions we take and the results we produce. No, it's our interpretations
Yeah.
car wrecks. It's our interpretations and not and my experience as a young guy growing up, I knew I knew there was something called interpretations, explanations, stories, all that. And my interpretation was they're either right or they're wrong, and mine are almost always right. And in my work and in my life now, I work with other people and myself as much as I can to move away from the automaticness with which we throw the right wrong grid, the right wrong scaffolding on top of our and other people's explanations, and move instead using new lenses, new glasses, effective, ineffective. Are my explanations, are they effective or ineffective given the results I say I want? Are my stories, my beliefs, my interpretations, are they productive or unproductive? Given the most important quantitative and qualitative results I say I want. And in my work, Margaret, I am explicit. I do a lot of work with leaders and teams. Everybody I work with is interested in results, of course. That's fine. But let's be very clear. I like people to think very broadly here, quantitative and qualitative results. Quantitative results, productivity, profitability, execution. Qualitative results, your organizational culture, the nature of your most important relationships, your public identity, your emotional well-being. Qualitative results. One of my favorite quotes of all time, Albert Einstein said, not everything that counts can be counted.
Hmm.
And not everything that can be
Good
counted
one.
really counts, right? And so once we start looking at, yes, we want to produce quantitative and qualitative results, and it's not the events of our life that move us to action, and then the actions produce results. No, it's our interpretations that move us to action and actions to outcomes. And these interpretations live in language. They live in
The other
language.
thing, just on that point, and you know, for me, I think this whole concept, bit of an aha. Again, just logically, it's like, oh yeah, I get that. But when you really sit back, I think I mentioned to you before that in my 20s and early 30s, especially, you're right. Things were either, hey, these are the facts. We're all seeing the facts, so it's right or wrong. Why would you think that's wrong when we're all looking at the same facts? But in fact, your example of the child that got an F, he's thinking I'm stupid. The parents are thinking you didn't study or you didn't put effort in or whatever that may be, right? It's we're all coming with different experiences and different lenses. So as a leader, you really have to think about also not just how you react to events, but how you communicate, because and making sure that you're giving examples and really explaining it, because based on the view people are bringing to it, they could be interpreting it very differently. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around that.
And it's not a problem that we make up explanations. We apparently have to, right?
Yeah.
But we live in language. We are linguistic beings. We're also emotional beings and biological beings, right? But we live in language. And what you mentioned about leaders, right? The ability, like I like to say it this way, we speak ourselves into the world. Leaders get paid to have effective conversations. These conversations, as an example, create organizational context, right? The vision and the goals and the objectives of any given organization, these are declared into being. Now, they're not physical, but they're real.
Yeah.
And if I work in your company, Margaret, and let's say I'm the only person in the room not on the leadership team, right? On Friday, Chalmers is doing fine. He's a good employee, all good. Let's say the leadership team, including you, go away for the weekend And in your weekend retreat, you establish a new value and a new goal for the organization. We all come back to work on Monday. Is it possible that my behavior that did not raise an eyebrow on Friday shows up as wrong or inappropriate on Monday? Well, yes, because the context changed. Now this is an organization where accountability is important. It used to not be. And seeing this, right, the power of this to create organizational context, organizational culture on purpose, yes, but we don't do it with hammer and nails. We do it with conversations. One of my teachers said there's no such thing as shared commitment without shared understanding coming first. And shared understanding, of course, is produced in conversations. And the starting point is, as a leader, just because I say exactly what I wanted to say, exactly like I rehearsed it, doesn't mean you are interpreting like I wanted to say.
Right.
It has nothing to do with that. And so
That
in
is
order for us to be
so
clear,
key.
we
Yeah.
have to, it is not my goal is that everybody in the room walks out of here with the same understanding, the same interpretation, no matter what I had to say to get them there. And so this presupposes, right, that each of us is a unique observer. By definition, nobody sees things exactly like anybody else by definition. And interestingly, in nature, no two snowflakes are alike. Well, guess what? No two trees are alike. No two pine cones are alike. No two grains of sand are alike. No two alligators are alike. Everything in nature is unique. I find that interesting,
Yeah.
fascinating. Everything, including every human being. Every single person, by definition, is interpreting based on the unique combination of things that make me who I am and you who you are. And that's the starting point for every interaction and for every relationship is the explicit acknowledgement that all these other people are not clones of me. They're not me and they can't be me and they're valid. Right.
And it makes communication a little more challenging, quite frankly,
Yeah.
because now you're thinking about what you say is not what
It
you
may
get
not
in a way,
be
right?
exactly.
One of the things that made me think about your example about going away to retreat, a lot of the people who I coach, when they're looking at creating values, core values, or thinking about core values for their organizations, we've really been focusing on what are some of the fundamental behaviors. So you may have a
Bingo.
core value, but what are the behaviors that value the expectation around that value? Because people can understand, it becomes more tangible. This is a behavior that highlights this value. So this is what's expected because you and I can interpret that value in very different ways.
We do.
So
We
if you
do.
really
And
want it to come alive, you really need to go more detail, more granular, and sure, okay, this is the behaviors we're expecting to live up to this value. Now, you're right, we will interpret it differently. It's not
we
even
will.
we
And I
can,
love how you
yeah.
said that because this is relatively new for me. I've been doing this work for a lot of years, but I've recently come to see that there is value in having a three-tiered or three-level approach to this. So let's use one that we covered in the workshop. Accountability, right? So healthy accountability is a core value. We can say, and what are the actual behaviors
Mhm.
that if we observe them would lead us to say, that is accountability embodied. That is accountability in action. So I've got two. Number one, we are clear and rigorous in establishing commitments with each other, and we manage 100% of the commitments that we make. So at the top level is the value, healthy accountability. One level beneath are two behaviors. One, we are clear and rigorous in establishing commitments with each other, and we manage, not necessarily keep, but we manage 100% of our commitments. And what's interesting to me, the layer underneath that, now we need some tools and distinctions and practices. We are rigorous in establishing commitments with each other. Now let's talk about elements of an effective request, valid responses.
Yeah.
Remember, specific tools, a shared vocabulary. So to be rigorous and clear in establishing commitments, we need to have a shared vocabulary around what are the elements of an effective request, what are valid responses. We manage 100% of our commitments managing commitments versus managing time. I like to say it this way: there's no such thing as time management. You never had it, you never will. Now, I understand that term, but think about it.
Yeah.
Everybody's walking around with an invisible backpack, and in the backpack are 48 different promises in different stages of completion. Managing commitments is a conversational competency, and to me, it's a leadership competency. So, managing commitments versus managing time is a distinction. Also, the notion that managing 100% is our standard, and also the new distinction, responsible complaint. A responsible complaint is a tool that I can use, right, to make sure that I manage 100% of my commitments. And both of those behaviors are underneath the broader value of accountability. So
Yeah.
I really like thinking of it, first comes the value, then come the observable behaviors, and then come the specific tools, distinctions, and practices that people need to use in doing those behaviors.
And what this does is, instead of, as you said, we're all unique, instead of our own interpretations, it enables a common, tangible interpretation.
It does.
Yeah.
It
So,
does.
and how best to move forward with it.
And
So, yeah.
a shared vocabulary, a shared
Yeah.
toolkit, right? I mean, I have an engineering background, so I'm a little biased here, but I like tools, right? And in this case, I like tools where we can talk and have the same vocabulary, on the same page with how do we make and manage commitments. Because it's interesting, organizations themselves may be understood as a network of interdependency. Organizations big and small, when you actually look at how do organizations actually produce the results they produce? And when we back up and look a little bit, one of the best things I was ever taught is organizations produce what they produce from people coordinating action. But we're not coordinating action with magic. We're coordinating action with certain types of conversations, and these we call promises, commitments, or agreements. And understanding organizations at their core as a network of nested commitments is, to me, a really beneficial lens. It's not the only lens, right? If you look at a company vertically, you're going to see reporting relationships. In fact, that's where silos come from, right? When
Yeah.
you look at when you look at an organization horizontally, you can see processes, right? Inputs, decision steps, outputs. Those are also valid ways to look at what an organization is. But to me, understanding organizations at a deep, deep level as a network of interdependent commitments provides an avenue for improving that the vertical and horizontal models don't in terms of
Well, it also
actually.
shows that, it's important what one person does is going to impact everything else.
Exactly.
So it really, I like that example. So
In
what I'd
fact,
like to
think
do,
about this. Like with an organization, it's interesting once, because we have a little drawing, right, showing all these interconnected commitments. I like to think of it this way. Uh, let's say our company lands a brand new contract, very important, very big contract. The sales team comes back and they're all excited. Well, we have our leadership meeting. Well, at that meeting, people around the leadership table are going to make new commitments based on the big commitment that we just got to deliver X by Y for our brand new customer. And then when they leave their meetings and have their own meetings, like when they leave the big meeting and have their own meetings, people around those tables make commitments based on those commitments. And
yeah,
now we can
trickle
see
down.
this cascading effect of the big commitment, the public commitment to the new customer kicks off a cascade of internal commitments, and we can make and manage commitments well, or we can make and manage commitments poorly, but we can't not do it.
Yeah.
We can't not do it. And these tools, elements of an effective request, valid responses, responsible complaints, these are tools for coordination of action. And I just find them to be so helpful with the frame that companies, organizations may be understood as this network of interdependency.
Oh, and it's all about execution at the end of the day, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and execution and communication.
Well,
So
I
just
think Peter Drucker said, strategy is a commodity, execution is an art.
yeah,
And I believe execution is an art because it's people. It involves human beings, right? I mean,
yeah,
think about think about how, in many ways, in fact, all of my work inside organizations, it's never the case that people are not smart. Everywhere I go, I'm surrounded by people that are very, very smart. The issues almost always, Margaret, are how well do we work together? It's not about IQ. It's about collaborative action. It's about relationships. It's about having difficult conversations well. I have a whole category I call missing conversations. Rest assured, if a company has a whole bunch of missing conversations, they are sub-optimizing at best and they're in trouble at worst, right? The
Yeah.
ability to have the conversations that many of us consider to be difficult, whether they're accountability conversations, mid-course correction, bad news conversations, the ability to have those is to me crucial for organization.
Yeah. And on this topic, what one thing I'd love to for you to chat a little bit about is the whole concept, and we talk about this in Vistage as well, but the whole concept of carefrontation. So as you talk about difficult or challenging conversations, what does this carefrontation mean? What does it look like in terms of when it gets implemented? And what should our viewers be thinking about?
Beautiful. Well, the first thing we can say is confrontation is a made-up word. Uh,
Hmm.
and I was with a group, and the guy said, "Yeah, but all words are made up." I said, "Well, you actually got me on that one. You actually got me right there. But this one is really made up. So it's not in Webster's dictionary. But if it was, and I asked people this at Vistage, I said, intuitively, the word is carefrontation. Intuitively, what does that word feel like it means to you? And most people come up with, well, I'm going to confront you with care, or I care enough about you to initiate a conversation with you that in this very moment, I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go. And Margaret, my experience is this: people are in Vistage groups, people are in leadership peer groups because of confrontation. They're in the peer group because they want to have their answers questioned. They're in the peer group because they want to have their explanations poked and probed, right? Because not all explanations are created equal. Some explanations lead to paralysis, others lead to expansive new possibilities. And so the notion of confrontation, it's a conversational context, right? That it can be purposefully established for the sake of two things. Number one, to dramatically reduce the number of avoided or missing conversations on this team. And number two, to increase the effectiveness and authenticity of the conversations that we do have. And so when I think about confrontation, a fundamental practice, right, is if we have been avoiding a conversation, we know in our heart we need to have, but for whatever reason we've been avoiding it, it is a confrontational practice to speak into those concerns. And I tell people, listen, if you've been avoiding a conversation, by definition, you avoided it for a reason. In confrontation, your self-awareness muscle is turned on enough that you can articulate the reasons you've had for historically not entering into this conversation and speak those out loud. Now, part of confrontation to me is understanding that everybody has a BS detector and an authenticity detector. And if I have an inner concern, if I've been avoiding a conversation with you, and if I speak that concern out loud to you exactly like it is in here, my experience is you feel it because you can't not feel it. My favorite definition for integrity, and it goes along with confrontation, integrity, the inner is the outer. They're integrated. And so in confrontation, we take advantage of authenticity detectors by being authentic out loud, right? We set the context. And again, when I speak into my concerns on the front end, I haven't even gotten to the content of the conversation. This is context. This is
So
context.
let's role play that. So
Yeah.
what do you mean if you're speaking it? So just
Right.
so our readers understand, what
Yeah,
does
yeah,
that actually mean? Give me an
yeah.
example.
Hey, Margaret, I need to have a conversation with you, but I'm really not sure how to have it. I have a concern that you may overreact to some feedback I'm going to give you, and you may think our friendship's in jeopardy. Let me say this, our friendship will never be in jeopardy, but there are some blind spots in your work. I have a concern also that what's clear in my head, it may come out garbled. And if I'm honest, I have a small concern. If I even raise this issue with you, you might quit. And I promise you, I do not want you to quit, not in this economy. But the status quo cannot continue. And I'm struggling to bring some things to your attention. I think they're blind spots. I think they're blind spots. And I just can't figure out a way to do it in a way that has you not think I don't value all this other stuff that you do so well. And Margaret, I think about three C's. What do you care about? What are you concerned about? What are you committed to? In context. Margaret, I care about you as a manager. I care about you as a person, right? I'm committed to your success here at the firm. In fact, when you hired on, I told you I'd be your obstacle mover and I'd be your support. I'm committed to your success. I'm also committed to us hitting this third quarter target because if we don't hit that, all of us are going to be in trouble. I'm concerned if we don't have the conversation, neither of us is going to like it. I've been avoiding this conversation for 2 weeks, and that's my fault, not yours. I've been avoiding it because I didn't know how to start it, and I wasn't sure how it's going to go. But I need to have a
Love
conversation,
that. I love the three C's.
right?
That's a good way to
Those
kind of
three.
remember.
What do you care about? What are you committed to? What are you concerned about?
Yeah,
And I like that. In fact, if I'm honest, a lot of the conversations in my life that I've historically avoided, I avoided them historically because I didn't know how to start them.
yeah,
When I was introduced to this, it's Eureka. I know how to start. It's context.
yeah.
It's context. The,
I
the,
love that.
the three C's and let the authenticity detectors go off because they will.
Well, it allows you to be vulnerable
Yep.
and, get
Yeah,
what's you're concerned about out as well. So I
it
love
is.
that.
And
Yay.
with carpentation, I like to think about, or really any difficult conversations, I have two things I always have in my head at the forefront. Number one, there are no guarantees in any conversation. So no matter what we do or don't do, there's simply no ironclad guarantees. And to ask myself this question as I'm preparing, okay, there's no guarantees, but what can I do in this upcoming conversation such that no matter what the ultimate outcome does turn out to be, I will have the fewest regrets because there's no guarantees anyway.
Yeah,
What can I do that no matter what the ultimate outcome is, has me be able to look in the mirror either 10 minutes after it's over or 10 years after
and I
it's
try to do the right thing.
I did the best I could.
Yeah,
I brought my best self to the table
love that.
because
Oh,
and this is on top of the broad claim, right, that anybody can have an easy conversation.
yeah,
Those don't differentiate anything. They don't separate anything. To me, Margaret, these conversations that we're talking about, these are the ones that separate great leaders from okay leaders, great parents, for goodness sakes, from okay parents, great couples from okay couples, great Vistage groups from okay Vistage groups, great leadership teams from okay leadership teams.
well, and I think your point is, I mean, that's such a great, I want to be cognizant of your time because you've been so generous, Chalmers. But I think that's such an important point that we're talking about here. It was in the context of really leadership, but these concepts are important just everyday relationships. It's about, bringing your authentic self. It's about trying to do the right thing. And it's just trying to communicate effectively and getting the results that you're looking for. So I love that you tied that to whether it's at work, whether it's in a relationship, it's with your kids. All these apply to just life.
I think so. And one of my basic claims is we are not hermits. We are already interdependent. Right? We are
Yeah,
already dancing, metaphorically speaking. We're already dancing. Leadership obviously doesn't make sense without followers, right? Leaders have organizations. Everything is in relationship. We are already in relationships in every domain of our lives. And I like to say it this way, we can be connected with other people in such a way it allows us to get the results we want, or we can be connected with people in such a way that it does not.
yeah,
But we can't punt. I don't
yeah,
think we can put, unless you actually want to be in the woods all by yourself, that's fine. But that's not most of us. Most of us want to, be successful and in the world, making a difference, making a contribution, building healthy relationships. So we are not hermits. We are absolutely already connected with other human beings.
yeah. Love that. So, Chalmers, in closing, is there anything else that, and we talked about, I think, the key topics. Plus, anything else though that you would like to share with our listeners before hanging up?
That's a good question. I would like to invite people to take a look at the way language creates our internal and external conversations. Yes, we do describe with language, but the invitation is every single time we say yes versus no, we move in the world in a different way, right? As you and I were talking before we got on the call, the internal narratives that we live in, we're not just reading them, we wrote them.
Yeah.
We wrote them, and they are absolutely moving us in one direction or another. And I have not found anything better than a Vistage group and or a solid relationship to create a safe enough space where I can share some of my internal narratives with you in a safe space, right? In a safe space. Help me understand, Margaret, what you see that I don't. Because these internal narratives, not the objective events of our lives, but the internal narratives that we live in, these are going to drive us to certain actions. And the actions, of course, are going to lead to certain results, quantitative and qualitative results. But it starts with, in fact, one of my teachers said, we speak ourselves into the world, right? We speak ourselves into the world. Language has a creative side to it. And my experience is once you start noticing it, you can't not notice it. Once you
I think
stretch,
that is, I mean, and I think for me, your workshop, that's what it did. It kind of brought it to the forefront. It's like, huh, not necessarily rocket science, but
no,
interesting. But a different way of looking at
yeah,
it,
yes.
or bringing it to the front, saying, "Gosh, I really need to keep this front and center because it's going to make a big difference."
I think a lot of what I like to think I do, I'm a professional reminder.
Yeah, love that.
I want to remind people of some things that we do know and maybe frame it in a way that we can more easily access it and apply it.
Yeah,
Use
it's a very thoughtful approach that's not intuitive to all of us for sure. So, Chalmers, I
exactly.
have a question for you. If one of our listeners wanted to, I know you're very involved with the Vistage Network, but outside the Vistage Network, it sounds like you do this 2 day workshop as well. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to do that?
Absolutely. My website is www.chalmersbrothers.com, and my TED Talk is out there. So if you Google Chalmers Brothers TED, it'll pop up. But thank you for that, Margaret. I do split my time between half-day Vistage workshops, and I have a 6-month SOAR program that I do inside organizations, typically for leadership teams. It's a half-a-day workshop spaced about 30 days apart. People are in accountability groups. There's goal setting, there's homework and readings from the book, but it's a comprehensive leadership development program. And the way it came about was this noticing that many mid-sized organizations, many people get promoted into positions of leadership because they've demonstrated great functional or technical skills. Well, these are exactly what's not necessarily needed to be successful as a leader. So my workshops focus on conversational, relational, and emotional competencies.
Love that. Really important too. I'm gonna check it out. So thank you for
Beautiful.
sharing that.
Thank you so
Uh,
much for having me. It's
But
great
Chalmers, thank
reconnecting
you
with
so
you.
much. A real big thank you for your time. This is the stuff that growth is made of.